thank you very much for coming along and giving up some of your precious time to talk to the likes of Chad and I. I think most people hopefully have started to see some of our TekCurious Founder Series now, but for those that haven't, I guess it's sort of a chance for Chad and I to speak with founders within sort of the Southwest region, for them to share a bit of their story, the journey they've been on. And we like to try and pry a little bit underneath as well. So it's clearly to hear about all of the great successes, but I think also some of the challenges, the dark moments, the days, and sort of just for people that are either thinking about this journey or on the same journey as you, just to sort of take some comfort or take some sort of different thought processes and things away from it. So thank you very much for being a part of it, and we're looking forward to hearing about the story of Payaca. You got anything else to add to that, Chad?
No, just interested in all the different backgrounds we've got in this particular podcast. So you're doing it from, looks like, your children's bedroom, Carl. I'm doing it from the grass, the green grass at home, and Matt's doing it from his shed.
Yeah, it's my garage with all my tools nicely laid out in the background to impress you. It's real life. It's not a background.
Yeah, and it looks well organised as well, Matt.
Yeah, well, that was one of the many benefits of the lockdown, was the time at home to think about how I could improve my workspace. And yeah, this doubles up as both an office, a gym, and yeah, bike storage and all that. So it's all good.
Amazing. So before we do any way of sort of delving deeper, shall we say, into the motivations and the like, I thought maybe it would just be really good to get a sort of intro of the business. So you tell us what you guys do, man. That's probably a good starting block.
Yeah. Cool. So we create software for service businesses, mainly in the home improvement space. So think anything from electricians, roofers, plumbers, landscape gardeners. We do a little bit outside of those verticals, but that's the kind of main target areas. The software really focuses in on two specific areas, one of which is improving the conversion rates on quotes that they're sending out. And the second is improving the values of the jobs that they're carrying out. So ultimately, that leads to profitability, success, and growth. But in order to get there, it's effectively it's a blend of a CRM, quoting, invoicing, payment solutions. So anything from card payments, backs payments. Also, we enable the business to share finance options with their customers, so that enables that customer to secure the funds they need to work with that business in a way that doesn't mean that the business is involved in directly selling a finance product, which is a big benefit for them. It gets them over quite big regulatory barriers, risk, cost, managing it. A lot of the businesses we work with just don't want to be involved in that. So we provide that easy option. That's one of our kind of key unique features. Another one, just an example, because it focuses in on the same area, is we've made our quotes interactive, so they can build in options between different products, which effectively is like built-in upselling capabilities for them. So it's cutting down that time to get the between the customer saying, I want to add on this, take off this. It means that it's easy for them to add those items on, and it just increases that job value. They can then sign off on it, make any payments, and we manage it all the way through to kind of invoice. And then from there we connect with a lot of the top accounting services, so QuickBooks, Xero. So it's really like kind of an end-to-end solution for the businesses to run, but really focusing in on those key areas of improving the conversion rate and the average job values. So although a lot of different features that we have do cross over with some of our competitors, the way we packaged it together is quite unique and really focused on what we believe is the most valuable areas for these businesses. Ultimately, the problems they're trying to solve is they come to us and they want to grow, they want to be more profitable. And much of the other software out there either focuses on efficiencies, or maybe it focuses on job management. But we do parts of those, but really focusing on that key area that says, if you want to grow, if you want to become more profitable, then come to us, because we have the tools that help that really focus on that. And we also do things like show you analytics of your business performance. So not only can we say we will improve your conversion rate and your job values by 20, 30, 40%, we also will show you very clearly the results of that. So that gives them a big confidence that this is a product that will work for them.
No, that makes sense. That's a really good synopsis, and I think that's why I love doing these talks, because when people explain their business, you kind of sit and you kind of go, well, yeah, it seems like such an obvious idea, and you kind of go, why has no one ever come at that before? And I guess one of the things that always intrigues me is, I suppose, what gave you the idea, and what background have you come from to sort of end up doing what you did?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an idea that's kind of refined over time, but the kind of initial experience, I mean, my background started in studying statistics and going into analytics, data science, and then moved into product management roles. So clearly working with smart groups of software engineers to solve problems. I was working at OVO Energy before I started this. They acquired a brand called Corgi Home Plan, which is in the kind of insurance space, but home improvement, and wanted to launch a direct to customer kind of heating installation business, so a customer could come to them, get next day installation on a boiler, essentially. So that kind of opened my eyes to some of the problems in the home improvement space in particular, and there is that key difference between going to a big company and getting that really nice sales experience of, I can get a nice professional quote quickly, I've got a variety of payment options, or all that information is really clear, and from a sales point of view, the customer experience is really nice. It's the same as if you go to a big kitchen company like Wren Kitchens or Magnet or something, that like people go there because they can go to that place, they can get that professional quote, they can get all the options that they want done there and then, get the payment sorted, and that's great. The problem is that then a lot of those bigger businesses then subcontract the work to smaller companies, and these are smaller companies that then are struggling for their own pipeline of work. So they're not necessarily correlated with what are the best businesses out there, the businesses that really understand how to deliver an amazing customer experience, but don't necessarily have the same technical tools to be able to deliver that really nice sales experience and those multiple payment options, because that side of things is pretty hard. So I kind of went out and validated that this problem existed in many other verticals. So there's all these small businesses out there that didn't have access to the same sort of technical tool sets, and so we're losing out on the work with their customers, because they'd go to, let's say Wren Kitchens in this example, and get that in one day all sorted, but then actually when it comes to the installation process, perhaps it's quite disjointed, and it's not necessarily the service that they're expecting. So that customer would have been far better off if they could have gone to a nice smaller local business who could deliver all that, but they didn't do that because they couldn't get the professional quote, and they couldn't pick which options they wanted, and then pick a payment plan and all of that. So it felt like there was that huge gap in the market to supply those options to the many small businesses out there that ultimately, there's a million independent trades businesses in the UK, and really there's a subset of those that are really smart about their business but don't have access to the right tools. So that was kind of where the idea originated, and that we went through many iterations to get to where we are now, but really, one of the biggest challenges was how do companies offer things like finance without actually offering finance? How do they have that option available? And so we had to build a product around that. So that, we had to get FCA authorized. That took a lot of time. We had to build the MVP version of the product, which was very, very basic at the start, and learned that actually we needed to develop more and more features so that a business could just run everything through us, because that's when the additional options that we have built in really came into play. So yeah, I mean, often we do find that businesses think about things like finance options in the wrong way. So where we see it working very, very effectively is if it's an option in the background on every quote. It's not about a business saying, I'm going to use this as an advertising tool to bring in new business, bring in new customers. You don't want a customer coming to you purely because you offer finance. You want a customer coming to you because they really value the way you run your business and they want to buy from you. And we're just building in tools that get them across the line. So they don't have to think about selling it. It's just there passively. People don't have to have a conversation with them about, how do I pay for this? It's just there. They have all the options they need. And there isn't that kind of hard selling required.
So what about, when did it actually happen in your mind? I mean, because we talk to a lot of co-founders and they have that sort of that burning desire to do something on their own. Is that something that you've always thought about doing, irrespective of what it actually product was at the end? Was there a mindset in your head, you know what, or did it come to you during that moment where you saw a gap in the market, or was there a career plan to go, at some point I'm going to set up on my own?
So there was, but not from an early stage. I think it's something that in the kind of background growing up, I wasn't really exposed to people who were starting businesses, and it never really entered my mind as an option. Like, now I've found it, I don't want to ever do anything else, and I wish I'd have found it sooner. But it was really, my time at OVO Energy put me alongside a lot of people who thought in a very entrepreneurial way. I think the hard part is then going, okay, I'm going to go off and do something. But I guess as soon as I was exposed to the different things that you could do, and it really showed me that there was this option that I could go off and do something. And I think for a couple of years, I was fairly set that I was gonna go and do something. Of course, then the hard part is not just finding something that you're passionate about that solves a real customer problem, but also taking the leap and saying, I'm going to go off and do that. And I think it's something that, a lot of, say you're looking for investment, a lot of people value having co-founders, and clearly because it's really hard, and having someone else to support you along the way is really beneficial. And it's something that maybe I spend a fair bit of time thinking about, but actually when it came to it, I think it's much worse to go off and force it, get someone into that role of being a co-founder, unless it's just happened organically. So I was just fairly clear that the problem was there. It was a big problem, a big space. There was definitely space to refine a solution. And so, I just went for it and just decided, I'm gonna leave my job and I'm gonna start doing it. I didn't really know at that point how, or I didn't have any idea how I was gonna do it. And I think that's the thing that stops people going off and doing it, because they want to figure all the stuff out before they go and do it. But I think putting myself in that position where I just had to figure it out one way or another, that was the way that worked for me. And I think something that I really, I think something that really helps me is just perseverance. I say that is the one thing that, as long as you're in vaguely the right space, if you keep going, you will find a way to solve the problems, and you will find something that will work. I think that's the biggest thing, that there are times when everything is telling you that it's not going to work, this isn't right. But if you really believe that there is space to solve quite a number of different problems, then if you keep going, you'll find the answer.
That makes sense. This is one of the common things we hear from the people we speak to on this podcast, shall we say, is it's just that resilience. And almost some of the people kind of say you've got to be a little bit insane to do it, because it's as you said, it's that jumping into the absolute unknown, but having that real gut inner belief that I will find a way to make this work. And if I believe it, as you said, if you believe it enough, it will happen. So I suppose one of the things I guess I was intrigued just to find out that, Matt, so obviously you had a really good, safe job, good career at OVO, saw this gap in the market, weren't quite sure how you were going to make it work, but that day you kind of wrote out your notice, you put it on your boss's table, and you went, right, I'm off, I'm going to go and do it. What did that first sort of 3-6 months period of time look like? What did all that look like? And then I'll ask it again afterwards, but I guess I'd be really intrigued to get your thoughts on, if you know what you know now and you could look back and do it again, what would you have done differently?
I think there are loads of shortcuts that I know now, that doing it for the first time, you just have to find yourself. So, I mean, what did that look like? I guess day one, there was this big problem for us in that we needed to find a way to work within the FCA framework, Financial Conduct Authority, to build a solution that meant a business didn't need to be involved in selling finance, but at the same time, their customers could easily connect with funding options. So that felt like the biggest problem to solve initially, because unless we solve that, then nothing else worked necessarily. Although, having said that, since then we've built a lot of functionality that has huge value in its own right, and we have businesses signing up to use our services that aren't actually interested in the finance side at all. So perhaps that was an incorrect assumption. But that was the problem I started with, like, how do we get this going? Because I knew it was a long process. So it was a lot of time researching the kind of FCA rules, how all of that works, speaking to experts on the subject, although the majority of people said you couldn't do it. So fortunately, I was bloody minded enough to just keep going, and there was a solution. But that was an area I focused on. At the same time as that, got that going, and then it was about, okay, I need more and more validation and feedback from potential customers. So I did things like go to builders merchants and say, can I set up a little banner in here and just talk to people that come in, and a lot of people were like, yeah, go for it. And I think that's the piece of work that a lot of people skip, especially when it's a market that my background isn't as a tradesman. So spending the time immersing myself in that was really, really necessary to understand quite deeply the problems that they have. And I say one of the things that we've managed to succeed, one of the reasons that we've kind of got to where we are, is because we've got both the technical capability to build good user experiences, but also the deep understanding of our customers. And I think working in a space like this, a lot of people miss that. It's either you find people are very good technically, product people, tech people going in, but not doing the work to really understand the businesses you're working with deeply, or you have kind of industry veterans who then aren't necessarily great at building great UX and tech. So it felt like we had something, or created something pretty unique there by just doing that piece of work, which was hard. So there was a lot of time doing that and testing things and trying things, and you spend a lot of time waiting for a case officer to be assigned with the FCA, and there's back and forth, and that process took about 6 months. So in that time, it was hard because we were like building some really basic software, but then couldn't actually test the core bit of functionality we had at the start, which was here are some customer finance options. So that was a pretty, well, a really frustrating experience, and also having pretty limited funding. Having said that, I did have an early investor that put in enough to kind of make it workable, and because that person invested in me, as well as the business, but ultimately, you know, unless that person had known me, I wouldn't have got investment at that stage. That put me in a pretty fortunate position. I'd say the thing that, if I could sort of start again, the thing that I do very differently is, you know, it's great getting all that feedback from people, but it's really hard to know what to listen to unless someone's paying you. So for a long, and it's something that, you know, you can read all the books about it and you can understand it, and you can know that when people, you know, like, unless you charge people, it's hard to really, they've not signed any value to it. So how do you know what to listen to? But until you've actually gone through it, I think you're almost too scared about saying, you know, this thing costs money, pay me for it, because you're embarrassed about it in a way. You're not like, this is nothing like what I want to create, but it's something like really early. But if you're not doing that, then you're getting all this feedback, and how do you know it's someone that will actually be a valuable customer at any point? So how do you know what to listen to? So it took a long time before we were actually charging for the product. But as soon as you start doing that, you find that, you know, as long as you've got something that is of value, then people will pay for it. Also, there is that tendency to underprice what you're doing, and we've had since launching, we've had a number of price changes, and no point as increasing the prices had a negative impact on ability to kind of convert people into paying customers. So that's something that people always get wrong, and we got very wrong repeatedly. But the most important thing is just iterating quickly. But yeah, so I would create something that I would charge people for earlier, and then know who to listen to. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone off on a few tangents there, but hopefully that answers the question.
It's good to listen, and lots of people enjoy listening to these things, because just the insight is fascinating. How every journey's similar but different, if that makes sense in their own right. And I guess then one of the two things I'm always keen to know is, one of the reasons is why Bristol? Why did you pick Bristol to set this up, if you'd like? And sort of, because I'm sure there's lots of other places you look, if you're setting up sort of a really cool tech business, I'm sure there's the pull of London and places like that. More investment is the opinion. There's more talent, again, is the opinion. So why the Southwest?
Yeah, I mean, investment certainly is something that is a lot harder here. But I think, like, personally, I really value getting out in the countryside, and so, you know, I wouldn't be able to do my job well if I didn't have the capabilities to do that on a regular basis. So whether it's going out, like running, cycling, and Bristol is kind of small enough that it's very easy to get out of the city quickly. Also, clearly, as a tech hub, it's been growing over the last 10 years certainly, and you know, access to talent, access to capital is getting easier. But for me, really, it's the way of life that you can have in Bristol is the fact that it's a city with a hell of a lot going on, with you know, not the same as London, but access to talent, with access to capital, and just, yeah, there is something quite important to me about where I live. So Bristol is for me somewhere where I just really want to live. London's not really for me. So part of it is that, and I think because there are so many more like opportunities in London. I think although there are more people, it's harder to find people who really want to buy into doing something over the longer term. And I think, you tend to get a slightly different type of person. I think is actually better suited to an early stage startup. Like I said, I'm sure there's loads of people who are great in London too, but for me, it's somewhere that I was kind of based anyway, and certainly didn't want to leave. And it felt like it wasn't a bad place to build an early stage startup. So everything, I guess, has seemed to have got easier over time with all this, and Bristol certainly seems to get better each year for all of this stuff.
So one of the questions I had, and we spoke to someone on our last podcast about the collaboration between co-founders in the Southwest. Do you touch on that at all? Do you speak to other co-founders? Is there a collaborative hub? Because obviously, whilst you all might have different products and different propositions to the market, I'm convinced that there is this sort of undertone of co-founders actually communicating with one another and giving advice, opinion. And do you do that a lot? Do you reach out to other co-founders?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a number of kind of groups that speak to a lot of other founders. And I think the thing about Bristol is the size that it's at it's you basically get to know everyone. Maybe I've not had deep conversation with everyone, but I know who pretty much everyone is, and I think because of that, it's very supportive. It's something that I guess you wouldn't get. So I've been to some founder meetups in London, for example, and there's way more people to meet, but you don't ever get to the stage where you feel like you kind of know everyone. Like you couldn't possibly. Like there's thousands of people still starting businesses, but in Bristol it's very different. So I think that whilst, because there are fewer people, I guess there's maybe it's more limited in some ways, in terms of if you're in London, there's always someone else that you could meet who may know something else or someone else. Building that network is, you don't have the same capabilities in Bristol, but there are huge positives, because I think almost as a support group, it's much closer, and certainly get a lot of value from talking to other people who've either going through the same experiences or have sort of been there, done it.
That makes sense. And then Matt, one of the things that always intrigues me is sort of how you achieve that scale, if you'd like, because obviously you mentioned sort of when you first set up, it was about getting that MVP out the door, if you'd like, just so you had a product, and then building on it moving forward. And I suppose sort of where you are now in terms of sort of how you've grown the team, how you've approached that, the different skills you've brought in, because I'm assuming sort of in the early days as the founder, you had the CTO hat on, the HRD hat on, the marketing director hat on. How have you done that? And then sort of from an IT and development and engineering perspective, there's always different trains of thoughts you see different companies taking. Do we use an outsourcer? Do we use sort of offshore, nearshore? Do we build our own capability? And what level do we bring that in at? So what's been your journey, again, sort of that you've taken, and the sort of things you've learned on that path?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I was always very focused on is there's huge long-term value in building out your team, entirely in-house. Now, one of the problems that I had is along the funding journey, I've done lots of smaller investment rounds. In some ways, that is a positive, because as you're constantly capital constrained, you're constantly doing lots of small tests and iterating. So that's the positive. The negative is very hard to build a team, because you never have the security to be like, okay, I can hire 3-4 people, and I know that I can pay their salaries for the next year, 18 months, whatever it is. So building that team, although we're in a really good place now, over time, that was one of the biggest frustrations, because I was really clear on the things that we wanted to do, that we wanted to build, and I just didn't have the capability to move anywhere near as quickly as I wanted to. So that was hard, I think. So in the early days, I did work with a few, very early on, did work with an agency that I'd worked with before, kind of knew the pros and cons of that to get something simple out the door, that really understood that you're kind of building something that you're prepared to throw away, and it's really just getting a test out there. So I think as long as you approach it from that point of view, I think that works. Maybe there are other people who've had experiences that could tell me, they've worked with outsourced teams and they've made a big success out of it. For me, I don't really believe that works, but maybe it does. I'd be prepared to be proven wrong. But then I think the challenge was I was really focused on wanting to build out that team. I think certainly from you're trying to raise investment point of view, I was a solo founder, and there was a lot of, and although I'm pretty technical, I'm not a software engineer myself, though I've done bits and pieces of programming. There was a big focus from investors saying, "Oh, you need a CTO, you need to find a technical co-founder." If you're technical enough, you don't. Yeah, it's an advantage. It certainly is. If I'd met the right person, then great. I'd have got them in, but I don't get hung up on that. I'd certainly say to people, as long as you're pretty technical. So that was the thing that distracted me the most, I'd say, is worrying about that, is worrying about having a co-founder, is worrying about having a CTO. And the only reason I was doing that was because everyone was telling me I needed to do that. But that's almost just going off on a slight tangent, but that is something that I'd say to people that there are so many people out there wanting to give you advice, but you have to understand that advice, whilst you should always listen to it and take it in, is always based on a very narrow set of variables that have created that experience. So the timing of when someone did something, and don't just because someone's had huge success, don't think that everything they say then is you just need to do what they say. I think a lot of really successful people understand that their advice has come from that narrow experience of, I did this at this time with these other variables, and that's why it was successful. And one of those variables may have been luck, but so I'd certainly say listen to all the advice, but put it in the context of where it's come from. And there's a lot of things that maybe I listened to more early days because I just didn't have the experience. So I sort of went about starting with the team, and actually the way that we got going is first employee, a software engineer, fairly juniors, come out of one of the kind of 12-week boot camp academy type things, and has really developed rapidly since working with us, and it's done incredibly well. And for me, it's about hiring the right attitude, people who buy into what you're doing, that see really want to learn, really want to push themselves, and that's been really successful. So hired one developer there, and then kind of we're still working with a contractor as well on the development side, but actually found someone who was working as if they were part of our team, not on a full-time basis, which would have been great. But that enabled us to make real progress on the technical side. I guess then I kind of really realized that certainly not on a long-term basis, but at an early stage, I could do the CTO role as well as the product role and the marketing role. And whilst it would have been great to have more support, it's doable. And I think we've then iterated over time. We've brought in another developer, and from a sort of technical perspective, though it's still a really small team. They're incredible. Their approach to solving problems that they've not solved before. We've actually got a tech team now that, although it's still very small, is one of the best teams I've ever worked with, and well, the best, and that's not coming from having like loads of experience. It's about having enough experience and the right attitude. We've been through a few iterations on the kind of marketing side. That's always an area that I've struggled to find the right role, but I think we've landed in a good place now. We certainly, with the types of customers that we're selling to, the businesses, they're very busy. A lot of them are kind of on the tools as well as doing the admin. The slightly bigger businesses do have admin staff, but what we found is you'll struggle to sell anything to them without having a conversation. And although there's loads we can do to kind of automate the onboarding experience, it's right now, if we have a conversation with someone, it's really effective. I think part of that is because of the type of products we have. We're almost defining a new category, and so we really struggle to communicate via a website what it is we do. As soon as we show people, they're like fully bought in, like 9 times out of 10. So they might come to us because they're like, oh, I've heard like finance might be a good option to have this, but actually it's the rest of the features that we show people that get them completely bought in, and like, great, these are all problems that I have, I want to solve these, great, I want to use this. But until you have that conversation, it's hard. So we've really tried to tailor our onboarding experience around, we need to do demos, we need to have that conversation with businesses up front. Okay, what are your problems? And then communicate how our solutions match their problems. And so maybe there's a point in the future where certainly our brand becomes more well known and we get better at communicating the benefits, and it can be more automated. But certainly now we've invested in building out a sales capability. So we've got a couple of great people now who can run those demos, which has really taken the pressure off me a little bit on that side of things, because until then, as you say, I was wearing so many different hats. So that once you have a tech team, you're then my experience is on the product side, so that's a full-time role, doing the product as well as doing like the sales, customer service, marketing, then all the boring admin stuff and the HR stuff. I mean, mainly admin, tax, and all that kind of accounting stuff that just has to be done. So yeah, getting in a really good person to lead the sales team, and we just hired another great person on the sales side that can get people onboarded. It feels like we're in a really good place now from both a tech and a marketing point of view. We were also quite fortunate in that we did a funding round in early March where we brought in an investor who owns a number of companies in the kind of marketing space, and that's provided us with a lot of support as well. So we're really well placed now to grow, and I think if we had a bit more funding available, I'd certainly want to be building out both of those teams on the tech and sales side, because that's what's directly correlated with our kind of growth rate at the moment. So it's been a slow process up until about 5-6 months ago, like way slower than I wanted it to be. But since then, we've made massive progress in terms of building out that team, and it's really, really strong right now, and one of the I think almost it's a great defensibility if you've got that great team, we've really got that now.
Oh, that sounds really good. And I think it's really interesting just listening to you saying kind of the first tech hire you made was someone out of a 12-week training program, which I think is brilliant, because so many people I speak to, and similarly to you, kind of aren't necessarily an engineer by background, but kind of know enough to get themselves through And you're right, sort of the pressures they get when you need a CTO on your pitch deck, because if you don't have that name on there, you're going to struggle. And then almost they kind of take the view, well, the first hire I need to make is probably a really good, heavy experience, sort of either lead engineer, someone who can do the strategic side, but who can still roll their sleeves up and be involved. But I think it's fascinating. It's great to see it's worked really well. And I think, I mean, as a business, and I'm really passionate about trying to get people career changes into IT. And I think these kind of 3-month boot camps are brilliant for people doing that. And you're right, one of the things we always talk about is hire for cultural fit. Do you know what I mean? If you hire for cultural fit and they have the same beliefs and passion as you, you'd be amazed at what people could achieve, really. So I think that's really refreshing and really good to see you doing that. And one really trivial question, but I tried working out, but I couldn't. Where did the name come from?
Yeah. I wish I had a better answer to this, actually. I mean, it was the end of a long night of just trying to figure out what good names were that were the right length, that had the .com available. Maybe that's not that important, but at the time it seemed like it was important. And had vaguely the right kind of words within it. So obviously we handle a lot of the payment side, so it's got pay in it. It was a word that didn't actually mean anything, but was 6 letters and had the .com available. I've sort of since then tried to retrospectively create a story because people always ask this question, and I feel like it would be great to have a better story, but in all honesty, I don't. But general feedback is the people like the name. Occasionally, I get interesting comments on it, but.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's really cool. And that's why I like asking the question. When you see an unusual name like that, it's always, where did it come from? Because they're 9 out of 10 times it's, well, the .com was available, or I kind of just merged a load of words together late one night, and I kind of like the sound of it, so I went with it. So yeah, no, fair play.
Yeah, I know. I'm always jealous of people who have these really elaborate stories to where the names come from, but yeah, I've not managed to create one yet. But yeah, watch this space.
Well, thanks. I think that's us, Matt. That's 45 minutes. You're going to have to create an amazing story about the name of the business, mate. Just think of something,
Yeah, maybe I should outsource that.
Yeah. But I appreciate you coming on today and talking so honestly about your journey and where the business is, and we wish you every success in the future. But thank you very much for your time, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks.